Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and next month is October, and I'm going to be a co-host for a brand new reading event, Occult Detective October. And this is an event where we are encouraging people to read fiction about occult detectives. Now, I am not an expert in this genre. I have read a little bit here and there, some books that could be qualified as occult detective fiction. But this is my first foray deeply into the genre. Now, there are a whole bunch of co-hosts, which I will list down below, which includes MJ of Reading This Life, who is the creator of this event. We also have a very special co-host, Dave Brzeski, and he is a professional in occult detective fiction. He publishes a magazine on the subject. So if you want real expert advice about the subject, go to him. Now, this is an event that's all October long. There are some prompts that you can follow or disregard as you care to. I'm going to mention the prompts here, although I will not be following them in their weekly format as described. Week number 1 is classic, anything pre-1960s. Second week is modern, post-1960s. And week number 3, diverse author or character. And week 5 is anything goes. Now, as I understand it, the way to describe occult detective fiction is that you have some sort of detective. It could be a police officer, a private detective, or just an individual investigating things. And the things that they investigate turn out to be a little more than natural. And that's all that it takes. There's a lot of leeway here. You don't have to focus on a character is actually a detective. But what am I going to be reading? Now, as I said, I'm not going to follow the weekly prompts, even though my selections should hit them all, but not within the weekly, category. Now, I'm dividing my books up into audiobooks and digital books. And the first audiobook that I am going to be reading is The Devil Rides Out by Dennis Wheatley. Dennis Wheatley is a very famous horror writer from England. Got his start in the 30s, I believe. And this book that I'm going to be reading was written in 1934. And he writes books like this, To the Devil, a Daughter. And if you can see this is the back cover of Dennis Wheatley. Here he is in a smoking jacket. He's got his bottle of wine, a bottle of brandy, and he's just sitting there looking at you. So this is going to be very old-fashioned horror, I believe. Maybe atmospheric and probably very tame compared to modern standards. But Dennis Wheatley is an author that I've always wanted to read for decades. But I've always put him off because there's never been a real occasion to pick him up. But this month, I'm doing it. The Devil Rides Out by Dennis Wheatley. And here's a short description. A classic of the horror genre, Dennis Wheatley's The Devil Rides Out puts the powers of good against the forces of evil as Duc de Réchaud, pronunciation, wrestles for the soul of his friend with the charming but deadly Satanist, Mokata. Mokata has the power to summon the forces of darkness, and, as the Duke and his friends will find out, is willing to call upon ever-increasing horror until thundering hooves herald the arrival of the devil himself. The next audiobook I'm going to read was written in the 80s. It is a reread for me. I read it in the 80s, and it was originally written as a standalone novel. It eventually became a series. and it's The Tomb by F. Paul Wilson. Much to the chagrin of his girlfriend, Gia, Repairman Jack doesn't deal with appliances. He fixes situations for people, situations that too often land him in deadly danger. His latest fix is finding a stolen necklace, which, unknown to him, is more than a simple piece of jewelry. Some people say it's cursed. Others might call it blessed. The quest leads Jack to a rusty freighter on Manhattan's West Side docks. What he finds in the hold threatens his sanity and the city around him. But worst of all, it threatens Gia's daughter, Vicky, the last surviving member of a bloodline marked for extinction. Now, this was a very fun book when I read it in the 80s. As I said, it was originally a standalone novel. And then the author wrote two other pretty famous horror novels. One was The Keep, which is about Nazis in World War II meeting a supernatural creature. And then he wrote, I forgot the name of it, but a second horror novel about a surgeon, I think also in New York City, who encounters supernatural powers. And then he wrote a sequel to The Keep, which was 3 books. And the first 2 books are just a normal sequel. But in the third book, Repairman Jack comes back to do more of his thing. So I'm excited to reread this one. The next are going to be digital books. The first one is a collection of short stories. The Horror on the Links by C. Barry Quinn. These stories were originally written in the 1920s. He wrote for Weird Tales, which of course included H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, August Derleth, Clark Ashton Smith, and apparently he was the more popular author of that group back in the day. Nowadays, he's mostly forgotten, but this is a volume of his stories that have been republished. It is actually just the first volume of 5. Now, this book, I believe, is about 500 pages long, so I don't know if I will read every story in this collection, but I'm definitely going to dip into some now and then. What I'm probably going to do is read a short story in the morning and then go on to read whatever book I'm reading else besides that. So we'll get through that one. Another book I am going to be reading, Fallen Angel, Satan's Sleuth, #1, by Michael Avallone. From the single indelible for all of his lifetime moment that he stared down at what is left of Dorothea, no more than a bloody mass, which a bucket could hold all too easily. He was transformed into something else, something not quite human or real. Ritual murder. They had come upon her in the dead of night, and when it was all over, Dorothea St. George was dead. The beautiful actress, wife of millionaire playboy Philip St. George, had been violated, mutilated, and dismembered by a Manson-like cult of Satan worshippers. For months, St. George mourned, and then he emerged a man with a mission to avenge Dorothea's death and to save others who, like her, were fated to be sacrificed to the devil himself. He became the Satan Sleuth. Another book I am going to try to read, I'm not sure I'll have time for it, but I'm definitely going to try, is The Wine of Angels by Phil Rickman, published in 1999. And this is the first in the historically rich atmospheric mystery series featuring female exorcist Reverend Marilee Watkins. The new vicar never wanted a picture postcard parish or a huge and haunted vicarage, nor had she wanted to walk into a dispute over a controversial play about a 17th century clergyman accused of witchcraft, a story that certain long-established families would rather remain obscure. But in this Ledwardine, steeped in cider and secrets, a paradise of cobbled streets and timber-framed houses. Also, as Marilee Watkins and her teenage daughter Jane discover, a village where horrific murder is a tradition that spans centuries. So that is my plan for reading in October. To participate in Occult Detective October, you don't have to follow the prompts. You just have to read one story, one book, one audiobook that deals with occult detectives. So thank you for watching and keep on reading.